if you're wanting to shoot fast-moving objects, like lots of times, lots of times people will take their camera and they'll be shooting a video display, like there's a TV monitor in the shot that they're shooting, and it's got this black bar rolling through the TV monitor, and it looks really terrible. You've got everything in your image is fine, but you got this big black bar in your monitor of the image that's shooting the monitor that happens to be sitting next to the person who's talking or something. And you, in that case, would adjust your shutter speed to get rid of that flicker and that aggravation from that monitor you happen to be shooting in the shot. Okay, so you can change it to compensate for those problems. You can change it for artistic reasons and so forth, but in general, you want to try and keep your shutter speed set to the standard you're shooting at. You know, and ISO, again, ISO is the same. In this TV camera here, you know, they didn't talk about ISO. They talked about gain. But basically, it was the gain of the sensor. In the DSLR, ISO is being a term used that used to be the speed of a film, is used to determine, you know, the gain of the imager in your, or the sensor in your DSLR. But it's still, when you're changing ISO, you have the ability to create noise, okay? So the higher your ISO setting, you run into a potential of having a lot of noise in your picture, which unfortunately on your little DSLR monitor, you're not going to see it. You're going to have a beautiful picture on the back of your DSLR, and when you go into post, you're going to have this awful noise that you're going to have a very difficult time getting rid of. And so that's one reason to keep your ISO set at native ISO, and that way you're avoiding noise. ISO is related to the film ISO, okay, of your film stock you used to buy for your SLR cameras. And so ISO was like ASA, DIN, film speed. The sensitivity of a digital imaging system is related to that. And the gain refers to the sensor's level of sensitivity to light, okay? But as you increase your gain, you increase the noise. ISO is a term used with film that was related to a logarithmic numerical scale based on an electronic or exposure index, which relates to film stock, okay? And so ISO of 1,200 and 100 that you would have in your old film stock is sort of emulated in your gain parameters and your sensor parameters on your DSLR to emulate ISO settings you had on old style film. The lower the ISO gain setting, the less sensitive the sensor is to light, okay? And the higher the ISO setting, the more you're going to have noise, okay? So you have to, this trade-off. And so you have to be careful. You have to be careful when adjusting your ISO settings, and that's why it's rated, it's recommended you stick to native ISO. Also, higher ISO values kill color, and you cannot correct the loss of color information. The 422 DSLR file is compressed already, and then you remove color at the beginning when your ISO's too high, and you get to a point where you really can't bring back the color you never recorded in the first place. That's why you want to stick to native ISO. You know, if you have to, if you're in a really low light environment and there's only a couple of candles in the room, yeah, you might have to bring your ISO way up. You might have to take your aperture way open. You may have to take your ND filter off just to get a picture. Just be aware that you're going to have noise. Of course, this is all, you know, in a DSLR, that's why you have all these controls, because it gives you the artistic ability to paint an image. You know, with this really large sensor in a DSLR, you can actually compensate for low light conditions, you know. You have a low light condition, the large sensor allows you to shoot better because you have more area for the light to hit. So that's another thing about DSLR. Sensor size is important, and not all DSLRs have the same sensor. You know, there's a variation between different DSLRs and they have different sensors and different sizes of sensors. And so this is all very important when you're choosing which DSLR you're going to buy, is the sensor size, because the bigger the sensor, actually you have a little more ability to be artistic.